Welcome back to ET with GOTB. Well, that was a really long international window.
It was.
Let's get into it. I'm Rachel.
I'm Sophie.
And this is Extra Time with Girls on the Ball.
I almost forgot how to do that.
Okay, well, if you hear any scratching, meowing, pestering, that is Oscar. He's not been in this room before, so he's very excited, and it was either let him in or close the door and him battering the door down. So
And meowing.
It's the best option. You might also hear him killing his brother outside as well, Percy, who's less interested. Well, it's been a while since we've done an episode like this. But you've not been left with nothing, because we did have Pause and Play drop last week with Aoife Mannion. If you haven't already listened to it yet, shame on you. Listen to it, not yet, finish this, then go and listen to the Aoife Mannion one, or in fact go and watch it if you can. It is on YouTube, because the footage was lovely, if I do say so myself. We were on Tynemouth Beach, the sun was out, we had a drone, it was great, and Noodle the Doodle was there, she was great too.
And Aoife was great.
And obviously Aoife was great, sorry, yeah, we did get a bit distracted by the dog, but no, Aoife was very, actually some really interesting stuff she spoke about dealing with the injury, you know, things that triggered kind of her mentally dealing with the injury, how she manages social media, all that kind of stuff. It's very good, very worth listening to, and that is not just me being biased. But we also wanted to round up the international fixtures as a whole rather than doing one-on-one. Plus we were both travelling last week to different countries, which made it kind of difficult then to come together and do a pod as well. So we just felt like this is a better idea. So we will have a chat about England and Ireland's performances in this episode, given we were at the games, they were the ones we covered. And we'll have a look at how Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales fared as well. And Sophie, you can give our listeners a quick rundown of how some of the youth teams performed as well, because we did do an England under-23s game.
We did,
too.
yes.
Crammed one in there. Before we get into that, this is your weekly reminder to make sure you're subscribed or following us wherever you get your podcasts. I'm getting distracted now by the wailing of the cat. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you watch, wherever you listen to your podcasts, so you do not miss an episode. And do make sure you're following us across all of our socials as well. We're at Girls on the Ball. We're hoping to do a bonus ep this week as well. So another reason to subscribe. Right, let's get into it, shall we?
Shall?
England. Ukraine. What I'm going to do is we're going to do quick little pointers on each game, and I want you to give me like your overall takeaways from the window. Okay? So Ukraine won, England 6. This game, of course, was played in Turkey, given Ukraine are being attacked by Russia at the moment, and it is not a safe place to have a football match, despite the fact that their league is still ongoing, which is incredible. Crazy in itself. But yes, they chose Turkey as the location for this game, and you went out there for that one. Bit of a slower first half, quite a few changes, problem solved, figured it out in the second. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yes, I think so.
Yes?
Yep.
Go on, tell us more.
Oh, you want me to tell you now?
I want you to tell me a little bit now, yeah.
I think it was patience was the name of the game. I think that's the same for the next game that we come on to as well. Ukraine were always going to bank up. They had 2 lines of defensive players, basically 10 players behind the ball, basically camped out on the edge of or just inside their own box. So it was very, very hard, and they were compacting the central areas a lot. In the first half, England were finding a lot of space out wide, so Mia Letizia was getting on the ball a lot, but their crosses were going into the central area, and because there were so many Ukrainians in the central area, and they're quite tall as well, they were finding it really hard to try and make anything really impactful. They had a couple of chances here and there. Lotte Moy had a back heel effort that would have been special if it had gone in, but other than that, they weren't really they were creating, but not creating anything that was clear-cut enough for them to be able to find the back of the net. In the second half, I think the fact that they got the 2 goals very quickly after half-time really helped them. They came out with energy. I think that was really impressive throughout, actually, their energy. Sometimes when you watch England against these teams who defend and low block, they kind of are really energetic for like 15, 20 minutes. And then they kind of lose steam or lose patience or lose not motivation, but just like
Get frustrated
with the situation. And I don't think they did that at all. I think they just kept going. They were really on it in terms of winning back the ball when they lost it. They were just like, let's go again when something didn't work. So yeah, the second half, the 2 goals after half-time really, really helped them. They were suddenly 2-0 down. There was a little moment when Ukraine got back into the game, got their goal. It was really badly defended, I think, but a really nice moment for Kalinina to score that goal against not just England but the European champions. You imagine what that, that's a really...
She didn't score when they played last time. Was that her? She wasn't.
No,
okay.
it wasn't.
I thought it was that they had the same player.
But I think that shows that they can, cause teams problems, and then they went and scored against Spain as well. So there's a lot of positives in that they can take away, and that kind of encouraged them out of their structure.
Yeah. It's like they were like, they got brave.
They got a goal back, and they were like, well, we could get back into this one, and suddenly they started moving forward. And suddenly their defensive structure was all broken. And there was just this one moment just leading up to the penalty for England where they high-pressed England. England wriggled out of it, and they sent Esme Morgan away, and she literally had the whole field to run into to set up Lauren Hemp, and then the penalty came because there was a panic tackle. And I think that was just like the sign of the patience, and being able to react to situations, not drop your heads when you lose a goal. And be able to react and understand what the opposition are going to bring. And I think England did that really well.
Okay, they then followed that on with a home game in Nottingham against Iceland. This ended 2-0. A tougher prospect. Iceland were always going to provide a tougher opposition than Ukraine. They were harder to break down. They were fitter, tactically better, so they were able to sustain that structure. Thank you for that structure better than Ukraine were. But let's quickly talk about the LJ-LB link-up that despite playing on opposite sides of the pitch, they were still doing. Lauren James was having fun out there.
Lauren James was having fun out there. It was her first game back since being injured for England, since being injured in the Euro 2025 final. So she's been out a long while. It was very good to have her back, her energy back, her creativity. I thought England did it really well. So Lauren Hemp started on the right, Lauren James on the left. Sonia Bonpastel, before the international break, said she sees the left side as Lauren James's best position. And I think Serena Wiegmann probably sees the same. They were really intuitive about when to come inside and invert, and then when to, hug the wings and get the space that way. So I think they were building a lot of relationships out there. Lucy Bronze, she's ridiculous, isn't she?
I messaged you at one point, I was like, why is Lucy Bronze currently England's best striker in this game at the moment? She seemed to be getting on everything.
In a game like that, where you are attacking and you're not having to think about the defensive side of the game so much, she was able to just have fun. She kept making those runs into the box. I think Lauren James said at the end of the game that she knows when she puts a cross into the box, Lucy will make that run to the far post, and that's what she did for the opener.
Can I ask a question on the switching of Lauren Hemp and Lauren James and having them play on opposite sides? Now, some people might wonder why you'd put a left-footed player on the right and a right-footed player on the left, although LJ can play on both feet. Is that because if England are trying to break down a back line and they want to be able to invert, it effectively then puts the ball on their good foot to whip across the length of the box, if you like? Is that kind of
that
an option?
can be. It's also because it means that the player can come in and cut in on her left and find a pass on her left side.
Yeah.
So she's very comfortable coming in on that left foot. And it meant that Lucy could overlap quite a lot. And they were actually alternating quite a bit in terms of the overlaps. I think there were, on both sides, there were overlaps going on. It was interesting. On the other side, Georgia Stanway was going out and really linking up with Lauren James. And it was allowing Lauren James to do her best at floating inside and being able to float across the park and pick up different positions. And then Georgia Stanway would pick up that wide position and create space on the wide side. So I think, there are definite qualities, and Serena Wiegmann spoke about that at the end. It's her ability to cut inside on her left and enable the spaces to open up a bit more. I was just going to add about Georgia Stanway. She now has 8 goals in her last 5 England appearances. And I asked Serena Wiegmann about this too, because yes, she can, like she did against Ukraine, score wonderful goals from distance but I think she's making a lot more runs into the box.
Yeah, you've spoken about this in the past as something that was lacking in England's game, that when Alessia Russo dropped back to find the pass, no one read her enough to go in and be the option.
Yeah, and I think England have been able to work on this a lot in this last few games, with China and Ghana. Georgia didn't play against Ghana, but in those kind of games and these games as well, to enable her to make those runs into the box and become that box runner that some of the best midfielders in the world do. You think of, I just automatically think of Frank Lampard making those runs from midfield, being a box-to-box midfielder and then making those runs into the box and providing another source of goals, because Alessia is a brilliant player, but she is not the number 9 who is going to score 20 goals.
She's not like Ellen White.
Yeah, she doesn't hug the central areas of the box. She comes out, she helps, she presses, she comes deep to pick up the ball, she influences play in the build-up. And when you have a striker like that, it's the same with someone like a Viv Miedema. You need the other players to be intelligent enough to make those runs into the area to pick up the positions where the striker would be if your striker isn't there.
So in the end, England came away from that with a 2-0 win. What would your overall takeaways be from this window? I thought it was interesting you asked Serena Wiegman about this kind of longer window. And actually, I think what was interesting was that for the teams that only played 2 games, they had longer time on the training pitch together. So as opposed to just going, okay, these 3 days are for this game, these 3 days are for this game, they actually had a bit longer to just try other things.
I think really, really valuable. And these moments don't come around in international football very often. I asked Alessia Russo as well about it after the game against Ukraine. And she was saying, we don't, often we go into camp, 3 days later we have a game, and then 3 days later we have another game. And you maybe have 1 or 2 tactical sessions here and there. You don't get a lot of time off the pitch to bond with each other, to work on analysis, to work on different things. And I think that extra week beforehand, and they're going to have it again in the April break, where they're going to have a week before their first fixture. I think it's going to do them the world of good, having that time on the training pitch, going into Spain, but then also going into potentially the World Cup next year.
That leads me nicely on to Ireland, because I think for me, there was a couple of reasons why the performance against France was better than the performance against the Netherlands, even though the scores were the same. So Ireland lost 2-1 to France and lost 2-1 to the Netherlands. We'll start with the France game, but part of me thinks that longer period leading into that game allowed them to really focus on exactly what they needed to do. They led from the 12th minute, Katie McCabe getting a lovely goal, Emily Murphy heavily involved in that, but also just more widely in the attacking play. Ireland had 3 clear shots on goal that required good saves in the lead up to that, what ultimately was the Katie McCabe chance. So I was quite impressed by, despite the game starting very quickly, France were on the front foot, got a corner. Ireland did have 3 really good opportunities, frustratingly, that they didn't put away. And I just found that they were really defensively disciplined, as we often are, but in a more tactically astute way. It didn't feel like kind of bodies on the line defending. It felt like really diligent, doubling up on certain players. Everyone knew their role. Everyone knew when to step, when to hold. The tackles that were made, maybe that would be normally last ditch, they'd come away with the ball and play a ball out. There was a lot more control around how they were defending. France understandably looked sharp. They always do. They're a team that frightened me, no matter the fact that they haven't won a major tournament. Do you know what I mean? They just play with such speed. Even their back line is fast. And I think that was something that stood to them a lot, was Oriane Jean-François was played so well in the game in terms of any time the ball going back. She's so quick to get back to that ball. But I really enjoyed the pairing of Ciara Caruso and Emily Murphy together. It made Ireland really effective on the counter-attack. And I thought, despite having 25% possession, they created the same number of chances that France did, and they had six on target to France's 2, which of course are France's goals. But to limit France to just the 2 on target, I thought was pretty impressive. And I'm going to come on to what maybe could have been done better in the kind of overall roundup. But Melvin Mallard, I don't know why she didn't start. She came on and scored a brace in 8 minutes.
It baffles me because she was pretty much on the bench for much of the Euros, and there is so much good about the French side on paper, and then when it gets to major tournaments, and they normally breeze through qualifying really easily. When it gets to major tournaments, that's when they capitulate, and they don't use their kind of squad, I don't think, as well as they could do. Melvin Mallard has been performing well for Manchester United. She is probably, she's probably not got the name of like a Katoto or Diani, but she can offer so much in terms of what she brings off the bench, or if she was starting. So I do get surprised about that. I think Ireland played really well. I think there has to be, and maybe this is for the after bit, but there has to be...
If you take my point, I am going to be really annoyed. Go on.
What am I going to say?
Go on, we'll find out.
There has to be an understanding of where they're at.
Oh, fine, sure, yeah.
And
I will say that a bit more widely.
I do think there is a overestimation of, just because they've got into League A, not by the players, I just mean by the wider media and fans, of they've got into League A, they automatically have to be getting results and going toe-to-toe with them. the fact that they went to toe-to-toe with France is a huge positive, and it's really frustrating.
Deserve to come away with the point, at least.
And really frustrating for the players and for Carla Ward that they didn't get anything out of the game for their efforts, because the game plan was spot on. The attribution of the effort that they put in was spot on. They got their goal. They applied themselves really well. It was just the difference between the two sides at the moment is the fact that in those clinical moments, France take their chances and Ireland do not.
Yes, we had one cleared off the line at the death as well. And I actually was really impressed with the bravery where Ireland threw everything in the kitchen sink at France at the end. Like, you could tell when the final whistle blew that France were relieved. But that's still annoying, because as Katie McCabe says, you still come away with no points.
But like Emily Murphy said, those chances, you keep creating them, they will start to go in.
And I think that's I'll get to it, the overall takeaways. I'm not going to spoil myself. The result in terms of the Netherlands was another kind of sickener in terms of the fact that Ireland got themselves back into it after going behind. But I don't think they played as well as they did against France. I don't think they looked as sharp. I think they looked like a team who had a 3-day turnaround to prep for this. And they just didn't seem as kind of confident and disciplined and focused in the application defensively as they had done against France. And I think there was a massive Denise O'Sullivan shaped hole in the midfield because she's injured and went back to club, which was a huge loss because they just couldn't break up play in the midfield the way they had been doing against France, which meant it felt more backs against the wall against the Netherlands. And Lynette Berenstein she's a player who will take her chances. I thought they started much better in the second half, got their equaliser on a rather, I guess, penalty that some say was and some say was. Ireland don't care. Sometimes, as they say, you create your own luck. But I do think they deserve to get a goal back. But again, to not see out the game and allow the Dutch back into it, because for me, when I'm watching it, I've been watching it, I ended up closing the laptop because we were coming into the house and bringing all our stuff in, and I kind of went 81 minutes and I was like, I actually can't watch because I know we're going to concede. And I hate that. I hate that, like, just knowing that something's going to happen and little small mistake. And this is part of my overall takeaways. Louise Quinn suggested in her analysis that Ireland need to do better at game management when they're in those moments, because both of those games they could have been coming away with 2 points and we've come away with nothing. And that would have been massive results in that group, because I feel like a lot of people that I was speaking to back in Ireland were all like, oh, how's Poland doing? Oh, Poland got a draw against the Netherlands. Damn, they're the ones we're hoping to be competing against. And I'm like, Poland are not a bloody walkover either. Like, that's the concern. But I also then look at it and say, the fact that League A, you're seeing teams have to really battle with the ones that are most likely going to come third and fourth. And there's no results that come easy. So that's a big takeaway. I think one of the other things that I took away from this was that there's a much clearer identity of what Carla Ward wants from the team and how Ireland are going to play. And I think when she first came in, she had a desire to play a certain way with the ball and found out the hard way that was not something that Ireland were necessarily able to do. I think we've got a bit more Ireland and a bit more Carla Ward, and they've managed to balance that together, where when they do go forward with the ball, they look bloody dangerous, as opposed to just a punt up front and hope someone maybe gets ahead on it.
I think they've got really good foundations in place, as you mentioned before. So yeah, Kira Cruz and Emily Murphy up front are really key, I think, to driving them forward, setting the tone. They work until their legs can't run anymore. They will give everything. They have good skill on the ball, as we saw for, Emily Murphy's reverse pass into Katie McCabe. I think they have that technique as well. But when you're going to be a team against these kind of sides where you're not going to have much of the ball, being able to drive the tempo in terms of the press from the front is really key, and kind of that defensive out of possession work. I think for Ireland, it's very... I just think, as I said before, it's just remembering, this is, the second time in League A? Go down, there's been a lot of change during that time as well. Carla Ward has been in the job for a year. And basically, they did really well in League B other than the first game. The first game in League B was a struggle. That was her first game in charge, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was also, I think it was second game in charge. She won her first game in charge. It was also that kind of Carla Ward trying to play Carla Ward football without maybe recognising.
But this is what I mean. There's been a lot of adjustment, from the team to Carla Ward and her style of play, but also to Carla Ward to managing national team football, which she hasn't done before, and it's all a learning process, right? You get to Belgium in the playoffs, and I think that was the turning point for her and this team. And these games are always going to be disappointing if you lose them. And I know Katie McCabe has the highest standards and all of that, but there has to be a realisation that this kind of League A is the preparation and the experience that you're going to learn, so that if you get to the World Cup or when you get to a Euros, these experiences are all going to count to that point in time, and having these experiences are absolutely key.
Yeah.
Because then you build yourself, and you learn. Like, it's all about a learning process. A lot of these players haven't played in these moments before.
I also think there's a number of players in that team that hadn't been getting as many minutes that are now getting more minutes, and that shows on the pitch as well. Right, Poland doubleheader in the April window, and that is a very tough prospect, which I'm not looking forward to, and I hope the Irish, not the team, but broader people watching the team and whose expectations are very high, manage your expectations a little bit when it comes to Poland, because they are not an easy team. Yeah,
as well.
Well, they drew with the Dutch.
I think the bonus for Ireland, yes, Poland drew with the Dutch. I think the Dutch are going through their own transition at the moment, so they're going to be up and down a bit. But I think the defeat to France, the manner of it, it was 4-1, wasn't it? I think in the end. I think having that bit of edge of a goal difference might help as well at the end of the day, who knows, but it also doesn't actually really matter, because whether you finish third or fourth, you're still going to playoffs.
It's pride, Sophie. That's all we have to play for. Okay, let's move on quickly to the home nations. Northern Ireland, their two results in this window was Switzerland 2, Northern Ireland 0, and Northern Ireland 0, Turkey 1. So 2 losses for them, and they're of course under interim manager. I think while the loss to Switzerland may have been a little bit more expected, I think they'll be frustrated with the Turkey result. Yeah. But, you know, I think they didn't have games in the previous window. They need a little bit of stability, which will hopefully come now in the face of new manager, who they've poached from Scotland. McCardle, I think his name is. And yeah, I think he's coming in on the 1st of April, I think is when he's starting, and they're third in the group at the moment, facing bottom side Malta in a double header in that April window. So things could look a little bit different at the end of that window, hopefully.
Yeah, I said this on the Guardian podcast actually. I do worry about Northern Ireland at the moment, because I just don't really understand the ambition of the federation at this point in time. I think they've really dropped the ball in terms of the development of the team. They then picked it up so they dropped the ball after 2022, and they went through this like transition phase. Then they got Tanya Ox to be in, and things started to look like you were really building something. And then Tanya leaves to take over the Newcastle job, and I just think the whole signal that you're sending out when you don't arrange a camp at the end of the year is not a good signal. It's a real letdown for the players. Even if you go away for a week and train somewhere, even if you don't have a head coach and you just go and
every window is an opportunity.
Do some team bonding, do some work on the grass. It's absolutely crucial, and I do worry about that. Michael McCardle's come in. Hopefully, it's a sign that they're going to start building again. But when you're especially a small nation like Northern Ireland, you don't have a lot of resource. You have a league, but it's not really at the level that it needs to be feeding a national team necessarily to be able to compete at the top level of the game. You do wonder what the level of this side is, or what the ambitions are for the future, because they went through this whole really good spell of having youth tournaments, and they've got the under-17s again this summer. They started making a name for themselves on the international stage, and then you just let it sort of slip, and it's a real shame. Yeah,
disappointing. But hopefully with a now new permanent manager in place, things will pick up, we hope. Conversely, to their fortunes, Scotland had a very good window. They had a double header against Luxembourg. They beat them 5-0 away and 7-0 at home. Caroline Weir, the newly named captain, scored a hat-trick in the first game and had 4 assists in the second. I don't know what a 4 is in football. A quadruple of assists?
Yeah, maybe.
She had 4 assists. In the second. That's insane. So a very good start for her under her leadership. Melissa Andreatta kind of earmarked this as not the benchmark, but the start of the new era now, because they've had friendlies before. Now this is the start of qualifiers, and this is where they really want to start making a mark and seeing some change. And hopefully she's used those friendlies to get an idea of what she wants and have the players get an idea of what she wants out of them.
Yeah, she came in towards the end of the Nations League last summer, so in April last year. So I think she had 2 games with them, and you can't really judge on that. They had a few friendlies towards the end of the year, maybe a bit up and down. This is her, as you say, this is her time to stamp her mark on this team and kind of show the ambition that they have. Got a good group. They were always meant to beat Luxembourg, and they were always meant to beat Luxembourg well, so I'm not surprised at all by that. It's what they should have done. But the big step now is to get them back into a potential qualification for a major tournament. It's been too long for a team of that quality, or with the quality of players that they have, to not be anywhere near qualifying for a major tournament.
They are top of their group. They are tied, though, with Belgium at the top, who will be an interesting prospect. Wales faced Czechia. They drew 2-2 with Czechia and beat Montenegro 6-1 comfortably. They nabbed the equaliser against Czechia in the 93rd minute. So they will be delighted for that, because I think they're probably the main competition for topping this group. So that's a really important draw for them to get. Hannah Kane and Mara Griffiths both with braces against Montenegro, so that'll do them wonders in terms of confidence. And like Scotland, they're sitting top of the table due to goal difference, with Czechia just below them. They're like one below in goal difference, so it's very tight in that one.
I think Rhian Wilkinson will have been, despite what she said, a bit disappointed with that draw away. Yes, it's very close between them in the world rankings. Yes, they're their toughest opposition, but don't forget this is a team who were in Ligue A and who were playing at a major tournament last summer. They would have wanted a win away from home, and that would have set them away in terms of not just getting a more favourable qualifying position, because that's the playoff position, because that's the only way they can qualify for the World Cup, but also get them into League A for the next Nations League. I think going and doing that emphatically at home, they were expected to do it against Montenegro, but sometimes I think the likes of Wales or Northern Ireland or Scotland sometimes don't always make it as emphatic as it should be.
Yeah.
And the fact that they went and got that job done really, really well was a definite sign, I think, of good things to come.
And it could come down to goal difference. So the more you score, the better. All right, can you give us a quick roundup of youth teams? Who was playing? What was the score? What was happening?
So for England, the under-20s were out in Alicante. So they were playing 3 friendly games. They're preparing... The under-19s are preparing for their round 2 qualification that comes next month for the Euros this summer. But they're also preparing for the World Cup, the Under-20 World Cup that happens in Poland in the autumn.
Double whammy. Wow.
So they've kind of merged the 19s and 20s together and sent them on these kind of prep camps because I guess it works both ways. Lost to Spain as per, but then beat the Netherlands and beat Mexico. So pretty good, I think. Where they're at in the stage of the season as well, in the stage of this campaign, they'll look at that Spain result as something to build on rather than being too negative about it. The 19s, as will now gather next month to play for a qualification place, for a place in the tournament. So that's the next key step for them. For the 23s, they were under the charge of interim boss Laura Smith, who stepped up from the under-19s on an interim basis, and she will be leading the under-20s at the World Cup. So now that Lydia Bedford's been confirmed as the under-23 head coach permanently, Lauren will now step back down to the 19s, and she'll take them to...
Poland?
No, they're going to Switzerland next month.
Okay.
And then they're going to Bosnia in the summer if they qualify.
Who's Poland? What am I getting confused with?
That's the 20s World Cup.
Okay, I knew it was in there somewhere.
So the 23s had a pretty good... They had a okay window, I think. Lots of change going on there. Emma Coates left at the end of the last window, so in December. So she's been at the helm for the last 2 years. So there's inevitably going to be a bit of transition and change, but if any group of players can adapt to that, it's the 23s who have to deal with injuries and transition up and down all the time. And they beat France 1-0 to book their place in the semi-finals of the European competition, which happened next month in Spain. And then they drew with Netherlands. They were leading the whole game until like the 95th minute.
Last kick.
30 seconds left or something, which will be disappointing, but they are playing the Netherlands next, and Lauren Smith was like, I think that's a good thing because that gives you something to like.
Yes, they're playing them in the semi-finals.
Yeah.
Although, can we just get some new teams to play against? Just generally,
well, it's
Ireland, France again.
Well, no,
England,
but it's
Spain, England,
yeah.
Netherlands.
I mean, I think the Nations League is a different kettle of fish altogether. But the 23s, it's an emerging program, and I think it's so important. And you've had a lot of like conversations about this in Ireland. they are not doing anything about the under-23s at the moment, and I think it's a real missed opportunity in terms of providing a gap from the players who play under-19s football and then have nowhere to go, especially in Ireland where you have a league that's maybe not like the top quality yet or the most invested in, and there's a big gap to bridge between that and playing senior football. England we can see how that's worked, in terms of the players that have come up from the 23s in the last couple of years.
It'd be massive for Ireland to have
and been ready to play senior football.
It gives them somewhere to go. You don't lose then players out of that pathway if they're not getting into the senior teams straight away. You've got such a risk of losing players by not giving them games to play in those international windows and improving them. And
it's really actually time, I think, that the UEFA start really taking interest in this level of football, bringing in a Euros at U23 level or U21 level. I think 23 is better probably. Making it competitive, making there something to play for, giving these players a chance to go out to a tournament, because you're not always guaranteed that at youth level. Or if you come in late, if you skip the 17s and 19s, you've never played tournament football before and had that experience of being in competition, which is completely different to friendly camps. So I think UEFA really need to look at, because at the moment it's sort of there is a European competition, but it's sort of not really official. It's official, but
it's not even got a good name.
Yeah,
it's just called the European competition.
European competition. So I think that has to be the next step if we're looking at the development of women's football across the continent.
Absolutely. Well, sights now turn to domestic football. The WSL returns. The Subway League Cup final is also taking place this weekend. We are planning to do a bonus episode later in the week, looking ahead to the Subway League Cup final, amongst other things, with some input from a player if we're very lucky. So we're not going to go into the detail now because I don't want to spoil it. League-wise, obviously, it's been quite a long break. Some teams, I think, needed this. I'm intrigued and keen to see how Villa get on in this next block, although unfortunately they are starting against Manchester City. So out of the cauldron and into the fire, out of the fire into the cauldron, whatever that saying is. It's not ideal, but hopefully they will have found some stability. Conversely, I think Liverpool will be really disappointed to be getting Denise O'Sullivan back injured, although I do believe she had been managing a knee injury at club as well as at country. So that I remember the tackle happening on Denise, and just the way she kind of landed on her knee, and you could just tell that it wasn't ideal. She wasn't happy, and she carried on. But it is that time of year where things start to get a little bit more interesting. Things get a little bit more exciting as we get to the business end of the season, and as these international breaks come and go, it's interesting to see how teams come back in terms of not just fitness, but just in terms of momentum. Have they lost it? Are they going to gain it? And it could be really fun to see how the rest of the season pans out. So I'm looking forward to this weekend. Everything is on the same day, which is great because it makes it extra hard to cover. I'll be doing the Subway League Cup final. You will be doing Tottenham Everton. Yes, you will. So you will be at least getting one WSL game watched, unlike me. I'll be cramming them all in on Monday when we'll be recording our next WSL focused episode, because obviously we're doing the bonus one, as I just said. So do make sure you're subscribed and following us across all of our socials. You won't miss that, and you won't miss all of our coverage as well. Until then, I'll chat to you soon.